All right, ship chasing playoff week finale. We got Leone here, maybe Dink swinging by if he can swing it in a bit. And this is our last show of the week. We like to kind of get some final thoughts here. I'm curious from you guys as well. Some of your favorite plays. We'll talk it through, our favorite strategic angles after pouring over all of the details and the projections for this past week. And then we'll wrap up with one final lineup build and send everyone on their way to build their teams for the contest and win that $500,000. I'm Pete with Gretch and Pat and Leone. Let's do it.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your sight.
Jamar Alpha Play Chase.
Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
Pete, it looks like we're finally piss boys. You're right.
All right. Welcome back. Long time no see for Leone. We got Gretch. We got Pat. You finishing up dinner? Starting dinner? 6:05 normally.
Eating some popcorn and drinking a high noon. Settling in for a very fun night.
Wow. There you go. Gretch, how you doing?
Good.
And then Britt just came in and asked if I could watch BB for 10 minutes on stream. So the vibe shifted hard.
Leone, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm excited.
Yes. It's,
This
is always
all business tonight.
This show, it's like when the first time we did it, I feel like we all got drunk and it was like this grand old time. And then every year we've gotten older and wiser and realized how long it takes us to make our lineups after this. And so then I feel like we've matured is basically what
I haven't. No, I got a whole. I thought we were doing it like before.
No, you're literally a child.
Yeah, I was debating it, but I made the decision to do, dry January and maybe even longer, just kind of get rid of alcohol for a while here. So I was like, I'm not gonna give that up 10 days into the new year for a stream.
It's very mature of you.
There you go.
I mean, it was 50-50.
If we win this year, Gretch, if we win this year, you can never drink again.
I will. Yeah, I'll join you. If we win, I'll have one very expensive bottle of champagne and then never drink again. How about that? It can be the rule.
I'm gonna keep living my life as normal.
I mean, that's kind of bold there, Peter.
Or
do you?
I mean,
I
would
faith
love.
In us.
No, I actually was just talking to Davis about this. We recorded like a Take Cast New Year's resolutions thing, and I said I think within like the next year or two I'll quit alcohol for good. I got to work my way there. I'm not quite there, but I would like to get to that point. Anyways, we can save that. You can go watch Davis and I on the Take Cast if you want to hear that. Let's start kind of where we did last night. Pat, as far as kind of tweaks you've made to ownership projections, any shifts that you find, meaningful enough to discuss? I know you've been grinding a ton of content and kind of just hearing, what the sentiment is out there.
Yeah, I'm kind of I fiddled with the quarterbacks a little bit past the top two. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it'll be Allen and Lamar. That's just a guarantee. But how people play it with Hurts, if they sprinkle in Mahomes and at what rate, Daniels, does he catch any, all that stuff. And the general, I kind of moved Hurts down a little bit from last night, and I moved the other two guys up a hair. But I think that's going to be interesting to me to see. Obviously, Allen and Lamar are going to capture a gigantic share of the ownership, but then how else do people play it? I think will be really interesting.
Yeah, because it is interesting. If it was just like Lamar and Allen and then a bunch of pocket passers, people would probably get spooked off of it. But you can really tell yourself a story that Jaden and Hurts can keep pace with those guys, and then it starts to make the 2v2s not feel as disastrous in a way where you could just get buried otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the 4 QBs in 2025 fantasy ADP, QB1 through QB4, probably. And they're all playing wild card weekend. They all theoretically have the 4-game path. Last year we had obviously Lamar on a bye. Hurts in a worse situation. He ended up losing in week 1. Like his path is pretty clean this year. Daniels has obviously got the toughest path, but there's ways that it could work out. The NFC is not like Justin Herbert's really good, but a lot of us are kind of like, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, like, just like in general, I think a lot of people are just kind of writing off the Chargers making a strong run. But on the NFC side, like I could see it for Daniels. It depends on a few things, but I could see it. But yeah, I mean, it's like someone's going to get 3 games out of that group. It's a really strong quarter. We talked earlier in the week about the tight end class this year, or the tight end competition being weak. The quarterback competition is really strong in this.
Yeah, and it comes down to because we got a comment here asking about Goff. A big part of it is like, how are they going to do relative to their teammates? It makes Goff like super tricky because he's got to outscore Gibbs and Amon-Ra and Laporta. And like there will be like a tiny sprinkling of Jameson where you're like, you're going to go against teams. If you get to the Super Bowl with Goff, you're going to go against teams that have the quarterback on the other side. So it's like, is he outscoring that quarterback? Maybe not. And then is there go player outscoring your Goff? So, yeah, it's tough with Goff. I think the other big change I made was I'm bringing Gibbs and Amon-Ra a little closer. Actually, a lot closer from where we first started the week. I still have Gibbs as technically the chalk, but they're within 4%. I just have not heard anyone be like, I'm jamming Gibbs, I don't care. It's like everyone's going to play Gibbs. Gibbs is a great play. I want to play Gibbs, but I also want to play Amon-Ra, and what a pivot he is. And so I'm starting to think that maybe Blair and Hassan, we're kind of meeting in the middle on the initial read where we thought it'd be Gibbs, they thought it'd be Amon-Ra. I think they might be kind of chalk in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think, like, we were talking about like the lag in news as it relates to people kind of catching up to stuff, with the Hurts. And I've heard more people talking about the David Montgomery stuff lately. And it seems like people are coming around. I've seen people talk about like, oh, Gibbs now feels like the toughest click in round 1 of the underdog drafts. Like you're taking the bye and then Montgomery's coming back. Like I'm starting to see that sentiment tilt in a way that I think kind of backs up your, instinct to bring him down.
I could see Amon-Ra flipping Gibbs, but as of right now, I think it'll come in a little bit favoring Gibbs. But my confidence has like gotten lower and lower on that as the week has gone on.
I was saying to you guys earlier, I feel like everyone that I've heard talk about it, they think the one that's going to be higher is the one that they don't want to play, because like their next sentence is that they really want to play the lower. Like I've heard some people say it's going to be Amon-Ra that's higher in ownership, and then they're like, I really love playing Gibbs. I'm like, well, I mean, if that's the way you're thinking about it, then it's probably not as advantageous to your your situation as you're hoping.
I don't think you're getting leverage in this spot in any meaningful way. So if you're playing one lineup, play the guy you prefer. If you're playing a couple lineups, maybe mix it up. But I would be surprised if one guy's like a smash because everyone plays the other guy.
Yeah, and so basically where that leaves us is it's kind of approaching the Bucky and Mike Evans dynamic.
I think Bucky might have a significant gap in the end.
Okay, so you think that might actually be moving in the other direction?
When you look at the matchup, it's like you can run on the Commanders. They're not only are they bad against the run, teams run on them. They're a clear run funnel. Bucks are home. You get a running back who you think is going to win, then you get the running back again. That's always not the 2-game thing when one of them's a win.
Don't these people know Bucky's RAS sucks? God.
Leone,
I mean, I don't have it massive, but I think that gap will be a lot bigger in the end.
Leone, what about on your guys' side over at ETR with the actual projections? I know you guys have projections both for the wild card slate, all the playoff stuff. Have there been, you guys in the trenches, kind of any meaningful adjustments to players over the past few days?
Nothing too meaningful. I mean, knock on wood, stuff's been pretty quiet. We had like an AJ Brown scare a couple of days ago and then a Devontae Smith scare earlier today, but neither of them are on the final injury report. So there's not too much stuff. Like, I mean, we like increased Deontay Johnson's role tonight, but like that's not really affecting, Mixon or Nico, guys that you would take. Right. So I know I felt all week that our Jaden Daniels projection was maybe a little bit hot. Talked about that on ETM this morning, but we think the inputs are good, so we haven't really moved it down. So no, pretty quiet week, all things considered.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much everything settled. I don't think we're going to have any, big news bombs like the no Leonard Fournette at the last second. Although I guess you never know with this stuff. I wanted to do something. I do this during the crams on my channel for individual DFS slates, but it's always kind of fun to see where everyone is at. So I'm curious in the chat, if you guys are playing in either of these contests, the 35 or the 200, just tell me your favorite play on the slate. Can be chalk, can be contrarian, just like the one if we had you on the show and you got to put the first pick in a lineup, let us know who you would pick. I think it'd be fun to
Love
see
that.
this. And
Yeah, while they start doing that, Nick has a note that I don't think can go really overlooked, and I think is definitely solidifying things for Bucky. That the Lattimore stuff. I don't know. You might have mentioned it too a second ago, Pat. But with the matchup, but people know about the Lattimore. The Lattimore Evans thing is very well known, man, and he throws Evans off his game. He did for years and years and years. People will be irrationally concerned about an ejection. I saw references to it on Twitter, like when they were talking about Lattimore was going to play. It's like, well, Evans might get tossed, and it's like,
yeah,
we'll see.
We were doing our DFS breakdown on Off and On the Clock today, and John was hitting us with a stat about how many games in his career that I think it was like Evans had cleared 100 yards on Lattimore. It was some art threshold, and it was like once in his entire career or whatever. So like the Lattimore wide receiver cornerback matchup is certainly starting to, infiltrate the analysis this week. So I think that is a good note. Like if it is 50-50 and people are looking to break a tie, they're going to break it away from that matchup. All right, let me read some quick poll results here. I just kind of do these rapid fire, and then you guys can kind of help me if you notice any interesting through lines or themes. Laporta, Lad McConkey, Bucky, Addison, Josh Allen, Jacobs with an Eagles wide receiver. There's Worthy. There's Ertz, but with double tight end. There's another Worthy. Henry. There's a Nico as a pivot off of the hard fade here. Sutton. Worthy. There's another Worry. Oh, a Jalen Warren. Now we're getting spicy. Puka. There's a Bucky. Here's a Kyron. A Mark Andrews. Another Bucky here. Laporta and Jaden. So some Laporta, Bucky. Not hearing about too much Galaxy Brain at quarterback. From
didn't see Evans
there.
In there.
No, just lots of Bucky.
This is our audience, and I may have mentioned Bucky more than anyone has mentioned any player this week. So.
All right, Jade. Now we're getting more in the Galaxy Brain. There's a Khalil Shakur. There's a Marvin Mims there. Okay, cool. If you guys have any other favorites, feel free to let those trickle in. Always curious to see what you guys are on. Do either of you guys have a favorite play right now? Gretch, is Bucky still your favorite?
I mean, I don't think I would say he's my favorite. I think there's a chance Bucky comes in really high. And
dude, I mean, that's the vibe I'm getting right from that. Like, we're talking about Evans coming in. Like,
the Boomers will keep Evans up enough.
Who will? Boomer? No, the Boomers love Bucky, man. Bucky is a really good running back who came on down the stretch, won people money. Like, the Boomers they're familiar with Bucky's game. They like what they see. Yeah.
So Pat, let the people know just right now, what do you have the ownership at for Bucky and Evans?
As this went, I'm testing out 57 and 30. 57 Bucky, 30 Evans, yeah.
Were you asking Pete? Sorry, I didn't answer your question, but were you asking what our favorite?
Yeah, I was just curious, like if right now, you factor in all the different inputs we're kind of juggling. If you have a guy you really like right now,
what do you guys have on that?
My guy's probably Jacobs.
Yeah, he's a good play.
It's kind of my type of play. This is the Akers play from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I like Mixon and a similar play. Just these underdogs that aren't massive underdogs, that if you get it right, if you get the winner of the game right, especially in Jacobs's case, like the winner of the game, like Jacobs is in the optimal. Not 100% obviously, but really really likely that he is. So you're just making this bet. And then you've got some outs that he's scores well enough in a loss too, and you're fine, depending on what you do on the Philly side. I do like just looking at stuff more playing like what the lineup looks like if there's an upset, as opposed to say like flipping Cortland Sutton to Marvin Mims or something. Just thinking through it, if you think like there's like a 20% chance Marvin Mims outscores Cortland Sutton, right?
Yeah.
Even if you get that right in that 20% chance, you're not picking up that many points probably, and you're competing with a bunch of other chalk lineups too, that like you're really hoping to get this weird outcome. You could take that same 20% gamble and say the Broncos beat the Bills, and now you've got a Bronco in 2 games skill player that's definitely going to be optimal, and you've faded Josh Allen, who's on 50% of the teams. Like you've taken, they're both 20% gambles, but one puts you in a much better position to actually win than the other.
And the field's going to do the other one more than it should, because they love to just like pick a random player. I mean, not a ton, but people will throw in the random guy because
there's a sweat aspect equity to it, where if you take Marvin Mims and he's not that good, like you're still live, and you feel better about that. If you project the Bills to lose and they don't, and you're instant dead, you're going to feel crappy. But, the goal is kind of to try to win, even though me tilting in our Discord space would lead you to think the goal is to just have one live lineup at some point.
Yeah, this is really similar to the optionality thing we were talking about, where you're saying like, what 20% bet do you want to make? And there's kind of the undercover 20% bet that you can make that's more related to like the whole bracket and picking an upset. And people don't think about it that way. And the optionality thing we talked about is how people in the first round will love to play both sides of the first round games. And there's also, that's going to be played heavily because they don't want to pick a winner in the first round games. We've talked for years about you pick a winner in the first round games. It's going to help your lineups overall typically. But that doesn't mean you have to sacrifice all optionality. There are decisions you can make with the bracket that create optionality for a different, a couple different types of bracket, right? Like if you play, well, I mean, I think my answer to
you
my
need to
favorite
pick
play,
4 teams to lose, but 6 teams are going to lose. So you've got some ways you can play, James Cook and Cortland Sutton, and
right.
You hope Denver wins, but you're not totally dead if they don't.
It is funny because I do the way you put it with like the 2 things are both 20%. But the way I think most people's brains work is like you can kind of sit them down and like talk through the projection and talk through like the Vegas line and be like, so both of these are about 20%. One of them being the Broncos beating the Bills. And most people just be like, yeah, but the Broncos aren't going to beat the Bills. It's like the other one, like Mims could outscore Sutton, but the Broncos aren't beating the Bills. Like even if they're both 20% on paper, it just doesn't feel that way. That type of thing. It's so much easier to imagine like a player doing better in a game, but it's hard, and that's where I think like filling out a bracket is such a key part of this contest, actually deciding who's going to win these games.
And it's like you talk about all the time in DFS too, right, Leone? Like if you're building a GPP lineup, there's different ways to get unique. You could make a 1-for-1 positional pivot, or you could flip the build. I feel like flipping the build in this case is kind of playing a different bracket. And it's like it doesn't necessarily have to be a 1v1 off of a teammate. It could just be like, I'm going to play a bracket that no one else is anticipating.
Yeah, I think sometimes there's lineups, it's in main slate DFS too. I've changed the way I played the last couple of years, where it used to be just kind of like, let me jam in like my favorite leverage plays, kind of subjectively decide how many of them I want in there, just get that one-off high ceiling at low ownership. It's more evolved to like building lineups that have the best chance to win. And sometimes the lineup you build, it might seem like the path is narrow, like, oh, you need like these 2 upsets to happen or something that seem really unlikely. But if it happens, that lineup is really, really well positioned, versus sometimes when you build through one-offs, you might get the result you want and you're still not like gaining as much on the field as you think you are. But it feels comfier because you're more likely to get points and then feel better about the play that you made because you got those points from that play.
Right.
Pete, who's your favorite play?
I think right now it might be AJ Brown. You know, when I just kind of look at all that stuff and, you know, again, to me, he feels comfy when you look at his ownership. I think he could get there like in an Eagles loss, still being kind of an alpha. I think he could separate from Barkley over 2 games. Obviously, you got some heavy hitters to surpass in Hurts in Barkley. But yeah, I feel like he has just been, I don't know, like a sleeping giant, just like waiting to explode for one of those insane, like 102 tutty games. And if you get one of those across, you know, 1 to 2 games, I think he could, like, in retrospect, be like, wait, why weren't we playing more AJ Brown?
Totally.
I think
yeah.
mine would probably be Bucky still, even with the increased ownership.
Yeah, he's going to, well, I'm going to only increase him more.
Yeah. The other chalk piece that and I think Sutton's a really fun one. And to a lesser extent Pickens, but picking, you know, one of those guys on the Denver or Pittsburgh side and playing the 20% side that Leone was just saying, as far as like a lower percentage one. But the other, I think the other one I was thinking of is really chalky as well. And I was talking about him a little bit earlier in the chat, but I'm coming back around to thinking that you just need to play Kelsey and that he's just a really clean play. I think my whole early week was I wanted to find other good tight ends. I thought for a while that Andrews was definitely the play. And then we were talking about some of the different tight ends at various points. I saw some people mention Laporta. I saw several people mention Worthy in there. People have mentioned Andrews. I think people are going to play some Goddard, certainly some Ertz, some of these different options. If you go look at the tight ends, I mean, Kelsey just scored a lot more points than all these guys, caught a lot of passes. This idea that Kelsey needs to turn it on in the postseason is probably not even that true. He caught 97 balls as tight end premium. Like if they play 2 games, he just needs one of those 8 or 9 catch games. He's going to separate from these tight ends by like pretty meaningfully. And it's hard to talk yourself into any of the other KC plays. Like they're not clean this year. I do really like Xavier Worthy, but I kind of feel like Kelsey's just going to be like I think he's going to come in a little lower than he should too, because I mean, everyone is saying everything that I'm saying, but they're also like, we're doing it by default. And I think we should actually be excited to put Kelsey in instead of like by default, which can lead to convincing yourself to pivot off of it.
Yeah. I think like Kelsey is the inverse of, say, Jared Goff, right? In that, think of all of Jared Goff's positional competition and all of his teammate competition. And then you look at Travis Kelsey, look at all of his positional competition, nil, teammate competition, very weak. Like he just separates in 2 different arenas in such a clear way.
He does. Yeah.
He really does. Yeah.
People want to play him. They're just like, meh.
Yeah. We're also like together, we're building a lot of lineups. So sometimes it's hard to talk through this because most people are probably making like 1, 2, or 3 lineups. And it's like obviously very different where like we could play like underweight Kelsey by a little and still have a lot of Kelsey.
Yeah.
And you know, take shots on like Laporta here and there. So I feel like Gretsch, there's definitely some good chalk between the guys Gretsch mentioned, Bucky and Kelsey. I think Allen, you know, I've been ranting, raving about Allen all week. And, you know, Puka would be a guy where I'm just like, it just feels like he always gets there, you know, no matter what happens. I do think, you know, he's probably far enough away from Kyron in ownership that I think Kyron's fine, but I think Puka's also like very, like I wouldn't be mad if Puka was 75% and we played him.
I think he will be 75%. So there's a couple comments from Fisher. The Puka thing is crazy to me. 76%. Kyron's projected a bit less, but 1/6 the ownership. Nick says, I like Puka. Oh no, there was another thing questioning the Puka. But anyway, there's a ton of Puka love in the chat as well. Puka came in as the favorite play for a couple people. Jordan said he feels like the skeleton key. Nick said he likes him. He thinks that things are set up well for the Rams on Narrative Street. So, like,
well, I mean, can you get the skeleton key at like a 75% ownership?
I was trying to think of like what the lock on that door looks like.
The door's just open.
It's just open, yeah. But like when I'm projecting a guy for 76% ownership and people are like, he's my favorite play in the tournament, he's the key to the tournament, it's happening. Like this 76% is like people are playing Puka. I think we're going to play Puka. I'm not saying don't play Puka, by the way. I'm just saying I feel really confident in this ownership projection.
It is. It does have a little bit of vibes to, Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones years, where Devontae Adams came in at like 90%. The gap between those two is a little bit similar to Puka, and
Yeah.
the difference being they're less likely to win a game than I think we had some of those Adams, Aaron Jones years. If I'm remembering correctly, they were favorites. But another thing that the point,
But then they lost.
Yeah, then they lost.
Yeah.
And it was Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
The point Ben was making about Kelsey, we have him in the ETR FFPC projections leading the tight end position. Laporta very close, but we have Kelsey highest in points per game, but also highest on his team among skill players in points per game. No other tight end is really close to being the highest. So like those two things combined, there's a lot of buffer for Kelsey to underperform and still be the guy that you need on Kansas City.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Yeah. That's the idea I'm thinking of, is like, and when we talked about it earlier, Leone, I've said that I felt like people were less interested in Kelsey this year, and you were kind of maybe thinking the opposite. And I think part of that is, I think you're right to a degree for sure, because part of that is that last year there were some other good tight ends, and we felt like he needed to turn it on, which he ended up doing, but it felt thinner. This year, he's not been great all year and is still clearly what you were just saying, clearly the best tight end for the season in scoring that's in the postseason.
Yeah.
For projections, I'm looking at it right now. The next highest, he had 97 catches. The next highest catches for any tight end was Zach Ertz. He played all 17 games. Kelsey played 16. So Zach Ertz was at 66. He was 31 catches behind Kelsey. I mean, that's a massive gap. 2 catches per game, basically. And then there's like an even bigger, like, I guess Fryman's there at 65. Some of the dudes didn't play the whole year, whatever. There's injuries, etc. But there's no other tight end in the entire field that caught 70 balls this year. I mean, Kelsey's just like head and shoulders.
The other thing too, like we were talking about the different ways to get unique, and I actually think the Puka Kyron example is a pretty good one of like, if Puka is that overwhelming of a good play, I think the temptation is to say, oh, to get off that chalk, I have to play Kyron. It's like, well, actually just soft fading or hard fading the Rams is the way to get way unique, because you're saying, how does Puka fail? Like, sure, could Kyron have 25 carries and 2 touchdowns and Puka only scores 12? Like, yeah, but it's more likely that entire game fails or the entire Rams offense fails. And you can sidestep that chalk and also remove yourself from the systemic risk of the Rams offense failing at the same time.
I think hard fade is a very viable pivot for the Rams. I don't think a ton of people hard fade them. I think actually very few people hard fade them. I can see some kicker in that game because it's got a high total. But just like hard fading them and then say the Rams have a really bad game on offense, and it's my Puka versus it's your Puka versus my Sutton. It's your Puka versus my Pickens, right? Or whatever else. Like I'm getting a skill player to go against your Puka, who's a dog, but I'm also betting that the Rams lose. And if you take that skill player, maybe a better example would actually be like a Nico or a Lad. You're playing both sides of that game. So you're taking like a hard fade with Houston and turning it into Lad. And it's like, maybe I end up getting or hard fade of Houston turning into Nico. Maybe I get 2 games out of Houston that I'm not really expecting because I'm playing Lad as well. But it's like 2 games of Nico now versus your 1 game of Puka.
Yep. We were talking about the chalk that we really liked. Who do you guys think is like the bad chalk?
I don't know if I feel like there's less like clear bad chalk than in some years. We've had like, there was that year with Eckler was like probably way too high versus Jacksonville, and we were like pretty on it.
We'll toss one out. I think Justin Jefferson is bad chalk. Okay. I think like the overconfidence in him, like this just isn't the same Justin Jefferson in offense that we've seen this year. Gretch has made a lot of good points about Addison and them kind of splitting these blow up games. Like, I just don't think Jefferson is on the level of Puka, as far as like on this slate, and he's being treated as if he is. And so to me, that kind of overconfidence, whereas like we know if there's an alpha game on the Rams, it's going through Puka. I don't feel comfortable saying that for the Vikings.
I like that take.
I'd throw out. Oh, good.
I'm a little bit of a coward on a lot. Like I said, I like a lot of the chalk, but I guess I would say I think Saquon's like one of the more over-owned guys.
We're gonna let Saquon bury us again.
He's gonna let him bury us again. But we've definitely, seen the floor at times, even though he's hit the ceiling, remarkably well and consistently. But he's got, over the course of the season, he's got 3 games where he didn't crack double digits, which I know is like a low percentage. But, when you're playing this tournament and
you could almost say that's a good thing. He had so many
but
good
they're
games.
I guess they're in there. Like he's not in.
Yeah.
Like I think I'd be more shocked with a Puka single-digit game than a Saquon Barkley single-digit game.
Too.
And there's obviously routes where him scoring 16 points isn't enough because a teammate AJ Brown either goes off or they just lose this first game against Green Bay. So. And I say that because he's 75% owned, like if he was 60% owned, which is still really high, I wouldn't feel the same, but it does start to matter.
Yeah. I'll say James Cook. He's obviously, he led the league in touchdowns, but like, he's not, remember when we were drafting him this summer and it's like, well, he's not going to score any touchdowns. So, otherwise we'd be going in the second or third round or whatever. But it feels a little bit kind of a default play off Allen. You can't play Allen on every lineup. You want to play some Lamar. You want to mix it up at quarterback. And then you're like, what else do I do on the Bills? I put Dalton Kincaid in the lineup, and it was so gross that we took him out. It's just not really – you could do Shakir, I guess, but that's not – I bet you end up flipping that to Cook by the end of the build. So it's not like we're going to play Cook, but it's like a default play. And I think finding ways to get off like a play that you're not even excited about and is pretty owned would be, a good thing to think about ways to do.
Excluding week 18, where the Bills weren't trying, I think these are pretty shocking opportunity numbers for James Cook. Starting week 13, this is his last 5 games, 14 carries, 1 target, 6 carries, 2 targets, 14 carries, 1 target, 11 carries, 3 targets, 15 carries, 0 targets. That's a tough workload to be looking at when Josh Allen has a huge portion of the touchdowns. Now, do I think he gets more receiving work in the playoffs? Probably, but it's not going to be like that Devin Singletary year where they condensed onto him. Like they like using Ty Johnson and Ray Davis.
They love Ty Johnson.
Getting cut out. And to Pat's point about the touchdowns, he had more carries last year, 2 touchdowns. This year he has 16.
Yeah.
Truth's probably, somewhere in the middle.
And even though he led the league in touchdowns, and maybe this is just like wrong bro science, and maybe Leone, you could check me on this, but it feels like he's been more like positively correlated with Allen, like in games where the Bills roll, like Cook has a big game and Allen also has a monster game, whereas we sometimes see some more of like a negative correlation between Barkley in Hurts or Kyron in Puka, and that makes it even harder, right? Because what game scenarios then are you threading that needle of Cook hitting but Allen not?
Cook. I love this take, and I thought this earlier in the week briefly, and you're bringing this back, that Cook doesn't work in this contest because how does he get there in a loss? This is exactly what you said. I feel like he scores when they're rolling, when Allen's also scoring.
Because he's a like smaller back, so you assume, just from like playing a while, you assume like, oh, he's going to be like a pass catcher guy. Like if they get in shootouts, the other thing that's tough about Cook is like, what happens when they get in shootouts? What about that Rams game, right? When the whole offense blows up. That was his worst game, maybe of the season. That was a horrible game for him. That's the game Johnson scored a bunch. Yeah, it was absolute dud. You're like, how can this guy fail when the team is like putting up so many points? It's because he's not really their third down back. Ty Johnson is. He's a speed back, but he's more of an early down speed back. So you want them to be, you want positive game script. I think
if you're not playing Allen, playing some Kincaid teams, I'm probably overplaying this in my head, but I do like with a tight end premium, like the inefficient catch volume and a loss for some of these tight ends. Ben and I were talking about it with like, Hawkinson versus Addison if you're fading Jefferson. And it's like if you're playing them to lose, I kind of like Hawk and just like less efficiency, more catches. Same thing with Kincaid. Like Buffalo's playing from behind. There's more catch volume than usual. James Cook isn't scoring touchdowns because they're not winning. And James Cook's 38% owned and Dalton Kincaid's 4%. So.
And I think you can maybe have a little bit of underdog brain from drafting the wild card slate, but like I think you can extend that to a guy like Cade Otton, Bucks in a loss. You can extend it to Will Dissly, like Chargers in a loss. Like those guys can easily rack up 7 to 8 receptions and be the optimal player on their team in a loss.
Leone mentioned it with Freiermuth when I was talking about Pickens a little. I think that's another great application. Yeah, I mean, it's possible for sure.
Yeah, this the tight ends just do not separate, at least, the ones playing this week.
No.
I still like Andrews, though. I know Gretsch was on Andrews beginning of the week. I still think, I think there's a chance his Zay injury is a little worse than being on. Certainly seems like he would play in the divisional round, but there's any chance he misses or just isn't 100%. And you're probably playing Andrews in non-Super Bowl outcomes anyways, or else you'd be playing Lamar. So, like, if you get 2 really good games from Andrews with the tight end,
or just one huge game wild card weekend, like what if he catches 9 balls or 10 balls, which I think might be possible because they're going to have to run him in a lot more routes. And he's
been insane in the red zone too. Dink was talking about it on ETM, but I didn't realize he scored in like 10 of the last 12 games or something. I don't know. His touchdown streak's like pretty nuts.
Yep.
The tight end thing, the one thing I want to say about a lot of those plays that I don't know if we've actually explicitly said, but I think we're probably all sort of thinking, we were joking about it a little bit when Pat took a Kincaid as a flex, but somebody in the chat said the Ertz thing with the 2 tight end. A lot of those plays that we're talking about, I think you want to do them on single tight end builds because you want the math to work out where they are the obvious tight end because of the constraints of the contest and everything we've talked about. But if you start going into the flex part of it, then you need the tight ends to hit so big that, again, they're one of the 2 highest scoring losing players out of the 6 games, which is what happened with Jake Ferguson last year. And the math still worked out well for Kelsey. But the Ferguson thing was such an outlier, man. A 3 tight end game for one of these. I mean, it could happen again. But I feel like if you're playing Kincaid, if you're playing those kinds of guys, you do want to lean, if you're not making a ton of lineups, you do want to lean toward 1 tight end builds.
The part where I think you can make double tight ends are in the AFC, because when you're playing like Andrews and Kincaid, you're playing Baltimore and Buffalo to not go to the Super Bowl. That means KC's got a cleaner path and Kelsey's going to the Super Bowl. So I don't mind like
that makes sense to me.
The AFC tight ends together a little bit.
It's a bracket play. But yeah, pairing like Kelsey and Ertz is like you're playing Ertz, like use that. Do something different.
What were you saying, Leone?
If you're playing Kincaid or Andrews, you're playing Buffalo and Baltimore to not go to the Super Bowl, most likely.
Yeah.
If you're playing them to not go to the Super Bowl, Kansas City's odds of going to the Super Bowl are pretty high, and Kelsey's the best play on Kansas City.
I definitely think that's viable for Andrews. You think Kincaid could be the highest scoring, like optimal bill in a 2-gamer? I guess so.
Or a loss in the round 1.
That's the one where, but if he's a loss in round 1 and you're flexing him, he needs to outscore like Nico and George Pickens and Sutton and Jefferson and whoever else loses in all the other games.
Yeah, with the tight end premium scoring, I definitely think he could.
That's
I think he could, but also like in 2 games, or let's say you're playing a Lamar team, you could have, Lamar, Kelsey, Kincaid's not crazy to me,
I don't like that. It is crazy to me.
Because you're playing Kincaid to lose to Baltimore in round 2, and we just talked about how James Cook is.
I think it's a bracket play. It works.
Okay, sorry, you're saying a 2-gamer. I was thinking you're saying a 1-gamer there.
I still think he's fine in a 1-gamer, but
you probably want Sutton just in case it is a 1-gamer.
Yeah, I'm undervaluing the idea of Kincaid in a 2-gamer though, because it would probably be a Bill skill player.
To lose, but I definitely think he can get there in a 1-gamer. I know it's been a bad season for him, but we've just
But
seen
as
the
a
tight end
flex.
premium scoring. Going back to the Ferguson game last year, like Buffalo's just going to chuck if for some reason they get down in this game. There's an upset, which that was a huge upset last year. That was like a 9.5 point spread or something. Kincaid's got recently, since he came back, he's got a lot of like 7 target games. He's got a 10 target game in there. I definitely think he can play. He just really hasn't found the end zone much this year.
Yeah,
The 10 target game was
against
That was before he
Miami
got hurt.
in Week 9.
that was before.
Sorry,
he got hurt.
that was before he
Yeah.
came back.
Because his routes have not been quite as good since he came back. He's had a couple 7 target games. I didn't realize he'd only played the 3 games. It's yeah. I mean, maybe it's possible.
I think there's the tight end premium scoring too just creates like a weird range of outcomes where like we kind of boxed ourselves in last year where we like made that like a strict rule, like if not Kelsey, only I think if we didn't play tight end besides Kelsey, then we weren't playing Kelsey. I don't know if you need to make it that strict.
I was making this case last year, and I was wrong about it last year, and I'm making it again this year because I think the Jake Ferguson thing was so thin that you shouldn't try to play it, basically. That's my case this year. Which
I think it's also relative to ownership. Like it's a very,
what do you gain? Dink's not here to say what you win when you win. I mean, the massive swing.
Yeah.
And if you are correct, and all the Josh Allen teams get wiped out, and all the teams who pivoted to James Cook get wiped out, all the teams who just decided to fade, and you nail the Dalton Kincaid and the loss, I mean, the amount of lineups you are competing against the rest of the way is crazy.
Right, but just to clarify, I'm not saying you can't play Kincaid. You would still get that benefit if you played him as a solo tight end. I'm saying,
but the reason,
I guess I'm not trading like Kelsey is just the best play on his team.
yeah, that's the problem is that you're now kind of forcing a pivot off of the obvious KC play, and then you're like, well, I want KC to lose. Well, you just had Buffalo lose, so you kind of want KC to be in the mix as a potential Super Bowl team for you, so that you're not solely dependent on Baltimore unless it's Lamar.
So, but the reason I'm forcing a pivot off the KC thing is when I think of how does Dalton Kincaid get there, there are multiple paths, certainly, and we've talked about some of the 2-game stuff, and he could score enough. But some of the outcomes are he's not even the highest scoring player on his team because Kelsey just bottoms out. Like, what if Kelsey just looks terrible in the postseason, no Gray scores or whatever, right? Then Kelsey's not the tight end and no one else is. And so by default, like Kincaid, even on like a 15-point game or 2-game stretch where James Cook scored 20 could be the optimal tight end because there's no clean tight end play. The other tight ends that maybe
I get that part. Yeah,
that gapped over them.
So I wasn't really considering that part of it. That's true. Yeah.
I definitely think that's viable. It's more, I just think both are I think it's very viable to go the other way. Like, I don't think you have to play Kincaid in a solo tight end lineup. It's not that you shouldn't play him there, but I'd be fine either way.
In the chat, he says wearing a Kincaid jersey.
That's good.
There you go.
But I'd say for Andrews too. I'd say the same thing for Andrews, Kelsey too.
Yeah, it's the same idea.
There's some weird scenarios you could play 3 AFC tight ends with an NFC rushing quarterback.
I guess this does go back to me thinking that Kincaid's projection is just slimmer because the routes weren't necessarily great when he came back. I mentioned it earlier to you guys, but I was thinking of a Mike Tomlin quote from earlier in the year where he was talking about it's hard to board a moving train. It was, I think, in relation to Roman.
What does that mean?
Or whatever. Like that they've been rolling and then you're coming back. So Kincaid was out. The Bills are playing
it's hard
really
for
good.
Kincaid to got it.
They started using Ty Johnson a ton when Kincaid was out, and then when he came back, they ran Knox more routes than him. Like 2 of the first couple games back. Maybe he wasn't fully healthy. I think he ran more routes than Knox one of these games. I don't have the exact data in front of me, but it's like I thought coming into the year he might be the focal point of their passing game. I think they tried some stuff early. He wasn't as much as I wanted him to be, and then he got hurt. And he wasn't very effective. And then when he came back, it was like, yeah, I mean, he's a part of our offense. Like, we're not going to, make an effort to – we're doing a lot of other good things right now. This is what we're doing. And you're trying to – you're just going to be ancillary to that at this stage of the season. Maybe that's all like too much of a ball take or whatever. But when Leone pairs it with Andrews, I'm like, I don't see an issue with it with Andrews. Zay Flowers is out, and I think Andrews could wind up being a stud in the postseason, you know?
Well, look at this.
Andrews is definitely
Ruggin.
Dink.
How we doing, buddy?
Well, it's that time of the year, boys, where I sweat NBA bets while you guys talk about in FFPC, FFFPC. I don't know what some of the PCs and FCs playoff week. And
there's definitely FNCs. You're right about that.
Yeah. Well, we can give you the floor. Like, what do you want to talk about? Paolo not having a minutes restriction tonight. Dink, what do you want to get into?
Right now, I just want to see the Bulls keep laying it on the Wizards, so Jordan Poole and Alex Sarr don't come back into the game. And as I say that, it looks like Alex Sarr is in the game, so that's not going great. But no, something named Guy Santos was taking up like half my day trying to figure out how much that guy's going to play. It's a great time of the year in the NBA.
I was in a
Discord.
Discord
NBA player. You mentioned him earlier. I wasn't sure.
I was in a Discord channel where someone, I think it was Mathology, posted a photo of Guy Santos's significant other. So people were going down the rabbit hole with you, Drew, trying to figure out who Guy Santos was. So congratulations.
I would imagine Guy Santos is a lucky man if people are posting a photo of his others.
Definitely. So yeah, obviously you're you've been focused on NBA, but you've been in our group chat here. Do you got any hot takes? Just coming in firing. Obviously your beloved Chicago Bears, the one thing that gets you really fired up, aren't on this slate. But any hot takes for us?
No, nothing super hot. Other than I don't know how hot this is. I think the Fire stuff in LA is going to have like a really big impact. I don't think those teams are going to play well tomorrow. I think that's like a really, really big emotional thing that human beings are dealing with. And I think both the Rams, or this weekend, I should say, both the Rams and the Chargers, I don't think are going to play well in the opening weekend.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that part hasn't been discussed much. Obviously the line moved in Vikings' favor a bit when that shifted, but like outside of that, kind of like the mental aspect there. Because
people aren't really talking about it on the Chargers side, because they're not playing in LA, but of course it's a huge thing as well. So yeah. I
mean, we saw in the NBA the other night, like the Nuggets were without Jokic, which usually they're like the worst team in the league whenever they're without Jokic. And they were playing the Clippers team that Kawhi was away from the team because he was dealing with personal stuff related to the fires. And the Nuggets won by like 35 at home against an otherwise a Clippers team that has played most of the season without Kawhi, been really successful without Kawhi. So I think the mental toll on these guys, and I just think it's big. That's my big take for this weekend. I'm kind of expecting the LA teams, unfortunately, to not play their best.
I feel like it's hard to know how humans are going to respond. It's difficult. I'm surprised we haven't seen a little bit more in terms of the line movement stuff on that side of things. But we'll see. Yeah, but playoff game versus NBA regular season game,
for sure different.
Big disparity.
Yeah, for sure different. And I understand like humans are especially difficult for you to understand, Mike, and try to predict.
Hey, you're the Dink bot.
Did you do? I hadn't had a chance. Did you guys establish the million early today?
Yeah, we fired that off first thing in the morning.
Do you have any, because we were talking about one spot, we were wondering if it would trickle over into the playoff stuff, as far as like Lattimore on Evans, started to hear a little bit more talk about that. Do you have any single week DFS stuff that could potentially be applicable? We're talking about these spots where you play a team in a loss, and who could be in a good spot, even in a bad, team level setup.
Yeah, I flag planted McMillions, so I knew I was coming onto the right show. Knew the right narratives to hit, and we made sure to get that recording in because almost every year I end up staying up way too late after the stream and am completely dysfunctional on Saturday mornings of wildcard weekend. So we made sure to get that stream in this morning. But yeah, I think the Lattimore Mike Evans thing's got to be somewhat real. Like that was like 8 years of this stuff. So I don't know if his new team is going to try to take advantage and make sure that he's on Evans as much as possible. But that's what I would be doing if I was Washington.
Yeah.
The chat's making some interesting. Casey says counterpoint, LA strong motivation. Nick says he's kind of leaning the opposite, that he thought it could be galvanizing for the Rams, playing for their community, all those things. I mean, it's hard. Yeah.
It's certainly, I mean, it's like, I think the emotions are going to run very high for sure.
Mhm.
Like, I think that's definitely going to be the case.
But I agree with you.
I would imagine that preparation is being impacted.
Right.
Like,
Anything that throws off the NFL 6-game weekly schedule is tough to account for. I mean, we've seen it with, we got you on. I think one of the best examples of this year was once the Bears fired terrible coaches, they still didn't have anyone in the building who could clearly manage anything throughout the week. Were they practicing at all in the second half of the year, do you think? Because they were really struggling. It's a basic
I think they used the first half of games to practice. I mean, they couldn't, they literally, like, it was like drills in the first half of games, and then they'd actually like score when they were down 30. But yeah, just a completely inept organization.
And then end of the game, they're like, how do we call timeouts? What is this? What sport is this?
Incredibly frustrating season.
Yeah, I think the stuff of getting displaced from your routine for a game and all of that, not to mention the added family dynamics. I mean, Dink in the NBA stuff, right? Kawhi was supposed to come back and like this stuff impacted him. And he's like, I'm still taking some time off. Like there are the trickle down effects of that I think could be, very real. All right, let's see here, fellas. Any other takes you want to get off your chest, or you want to build a lineup here? I'm down for whatever.
We all did our favorite play in the whole tournament. Dink's come on every year and given us one play all the way back to the Gronk year that usually is the nuts. So where's the Dink nuts play? We got to get that.
All right, let me think through. Give
no pressure. Please give us
no pressure. Figure this out in 2 seconds.
Give it like 90 seconds and I'll have the nuts for you.
Yeah, no, you're there. We have a few of these. It's Spags
one guy
on the Thanksgiving show and gives
That's
it.
right.
I think on this one. Yeah.
The thing that ties them together is I never liked the pick, and then it always.
What were you saying, Leone?
There were just two guys we haven't talked about that I like a little bit. Like generally, we're not onto like the 1%er plays, but I do think there's like Jamison Williams' target share is like high enough with his big playability that you could play him. And going back to Pete talking about Jefferson being bad chalk, I think like the really obvious move for most people then is to play Addison or Hawkinson, like the other pass catchers. But man, 4% Aaron Jones. I know there's been some weird stuff with his usage lately, but if they did just condense onto him in the playoffs, that's, he catches balls too.
How are you guys projecting Aaron Jones? I assume he has a Q tag, Doc. Have you guys given any additional work to Cam Akers? Like it's a tricky one.
Yeah, it is tricky. I can tell you, we don't have like a big doc, but we also don't have it like condensing onto him like we might have it, otherwise. So we have, in terms of playing time, we've got Aaron Jones with a 68% carry share and Cam Akers with a 29% carry share of their designed carries. So about 2-1 in favor of Aaron Jones.
Kevin O'Connell loves Cam Akers, but Aaron Jones is also
he really does
meaningfully better than Cam Akers in football. So
I don't think it's like an amazing play, but it's a team's primary running back in a decent total game that's just not going to be played at all is sometimes worth a gamble.
Yeah,
makes sense to me.
For sure.
And I think that's like in the range on his ownership too. Like he goes really late in the best ball stuff. Is one of those guys like him and Zay. People just like not taking this guy. It's just like I think Akers coming in and scoring, and it's just the vibes are not good on the fantasy vibes. The way people feel about Jones is not good.
It's very easy to just not pick him, like in this contest in particular.
And like to give people some frame of reference, and I just was looking at your guys's projections. Like you have him ahead of James Cook, but just slightly below Kyron Williams. If you're trying to like figure out where that falls into play, this is for obviously just the wild card round, not the full playoffs. But like he's in that mix with, you know, Jacobs and Kyron and James Cook, and yet doesn't necessarily seem like he's getting discussed even on the same wavelength that we are those other running backs.
Dink, you got the guy?
Well, I want to hear. I don't want to. I'm afraid of duplicating some. I don't want to.
I think that's if you duplicate, then we just know that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
You know, that's
So the criteria is it's going to be in the winning lineup, and Karain hates it. That's the guy.
Those are the two boxes you need to check.
You have to check both boxes.
It's Josh Jacobs. It's obviously
That
Josh
was my pick. That was my favorite play in the tournament.
Yeah, boy. Yo, what's happened? What happened to you?
This is how we know for sure Dink's had us muted all week.
Dink, in our chat, I've said how much I like Jacobs like no less than 5 times.
Wow.
There's been a lot of messages in that chat, to be fair. Even I have not seen all of
No,
those.
that chat's been muted long ago. That's incredible. That's incredible that Pat likes Josh Jacobs. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. That's the guy.
That's very Bayesian, you know. He's ready to shift his priors here. Beautiful. All right. I guess we'll have to rethink the criteria then.
Yeah. Well, you could.
So
I mean, to be fair, Dink, I still do hate it. I really do. Deep down, I despise that I'm in on Josh Jacobs, but I am in on Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I mean, it makes too much sense, and I think like a combination of what you would expect their game plan to be in this week, down Christian Watson, and then kind of how they've played the second half of the season, really ever since the ankle injury for Jordan Love, and then on top of that, like the Philly fade or soft fade that kind of comes with that is like really, I'd imagine really, really strong in this type of format as well. As I imagine people are going to be loading up on Saquon. So yeah,
It will be. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's build a lineup here. We can go around and we can maybe talk about a few other spots as they come up, and because we always get ourselves into some corners and talk through what makes sense from both a, you know, individual pick level, but also for an overall lineup here. You know, Dink, we always let our first guest of honor here, you know, kick us off. Do you want to go ahead and slot Josh Jacobs in?
Let's let him. Yeah, let's preload Jacobs and then let him pick something else, because Pat and Dink are gonna fight over picking Jacobs.
Start with me. Start with me, and I'll go Jacobs.
Okay.
Yeah. I appreciate one show around here sticking to the honored guest bit. Good God.
I've never seen a bit get shut down by
our corporate headquarters. Just couldn't handle that one. All the dick jokes you could possibly handle, but we can't have an honored.
You guys
guest
need to
for a
learn
couple
is when Levitan's tried to shut down the cash game bit for years, and I just tell him no. So you guys should have just told him no.
Yeah, you should have powered through.
Obviously, yeah. Leone's the guy with firm boundaries on bits. Let me tell you. All right. So if we're going with Jacobs, man. Oh, how saucy do we start? I think we
get saucy. We've had some pretty saucy on stream lineup builds this week.
I think we go AJ Brown.
Okay, we're gonna roll the mini. Let's do it. There you go. So no soft fade here on the Eagles, playing both sides of this game, but with not the primary pieces there. Let's see, Gretch, or are we gonna go? How do we want? What order do we want to go?
Up to you.
Well, considering Dink now has said both Pat's and my favorite plays now on this show here, let's do it. You know what? I'm not fucking scared of Marshawn Lattimore. Come on. We're putting it like
it's just blocking Bucky every chance he gets this week.
You've had enough.
You've taken Evans multiple times.
Did we have Bucky last night?
I think we've had Bucky on every lineup, have we not?
No, Tuesday night I didn't get Bucky.
Oh, okay, Tuesday. I'll defer to you and remember.
Believe me, I wrote it down on my calendar. I'll never forget it. It was a betrayal of all betrayals.
I'm doing you a favor, Gretch. I'm trying to get this ownership closer intact here. Right. So let's jam Mike Evans. Come on.
It's me now?
It is.
Let's do Mark Andrews.
Okay. Mark
Kelsey
Andrews.
was my other play that I wanted.
You could still like.
I know.
Hey, Gretch, you see what these this flex? There's 4 of them here. You can put a lot of tight ends in there. All right, Pat.
Let me think about this. So we have Jacobs. Okay. I'm gonna say Jaden Daniels.
Okay. All right, now we're really
think about this because we got the Eagles maybe losing in round 1, and then we've got
Evans. I like it. That's a good pick.
And then the Packers are going to play Detroit. So the Commanders are going to the winner of the Vikings. This is what you talked about.
Evans is more viable probably in a loss than in a 2-game. I mean, Buck is probably getting there in a 2-game.
Yeah.
I love it. My pick, I will do. So we got both sides of 2 first-round games already. Got to start picking some winners. I could take Cortland Sutton and make Leone cry. That would be fun.
Well, we're fading Josh Allen. So
yeah, we've already faded.
He's like, I hate that about Leone. He's a fan, but he's like, no, that's actually smart.
That's actually really sharp, Gretch.
Yeah, that's very level-headed. All right. I'm gonna take. I'm thinking of the different games real quick. Yeah, no, I'll go Sutton. I like that.
Okay. Well,
I think
got our
Buffalo as a soft fade is definitely a viable path, even in 2 games potentially.
Okay, back to you, Dink. We have very little chalk in this lineup.
Yeah. So we have Andrews.
We haven't touched Chargers, Texans. We haven't touched Rams, Vikings.
There's a lot of chalk there,
and we're fading the Bills.
I didn't want to pick that one because Dink had a take on the Rams. So that's when I was thinking about the different games. I was like,
yeah. I mean, I think that the challenge with the Rams is, like, I think Puka is very likely in most situations, especially a losing situation. I think Puka is very likely to be their leading scorer and could still pile up enough receptions. So even though I think they would lose, I think Puka is still pretty good in those situations. Yeah. And I don't so I'll go Puka. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I also think with this lineup, we would ideally like one of the two, the Rams or the Vikings, is going to lose to the other, and then the other team is going to lose to the Commanders is our ideal situation. Yeah. So, yeah, makes a lot of sense to go Puka.
Yeah. I think we can, on the same kind of thought process with Puka, I think we can play Lad on this team.
And I think that works a lot too, because with the Sutton pick, I'm saying, sort of forcing us to be saying that Buffalo could get bounced in round 1. You want, I think, the Chargers to win over Houston because I really think they're more live to then go beat the Ravens. We're hoping that Allen and Lamar, that's a really thin one. But if Allen and Lamar both get bounced before playing 3 games, meaningfully helps the Daniels pick, right?
Yeah, I'm taking Tyler Bass.
Okay. I thought you were going to say Tyrell Shavers for a second. I like how we're like talking about Leone sitting over there like he's waiting for the volley back in speed chess, and he's like Tyler Bass.
No nonsense.
All right.
I'll go Justin Jefferson.
Okay.
Kind of complete the
wait. I don't think you can do that. That means we're fading one of.
Or do we need Kelsey?
He can. Yeah, that's probably pretty thin.
Yeah.
We still need a Lion. We still need a Lion, and we don't have a Raven yet. Oh no, we have Andrews.
We're gonna have to play Gibbs, I think.
Gibbs.
I don't want to steal his pick, but
we're gonna have to do Gibbs.
That's what I was gonna.
We're fading Texans, right?
We're fading
We should
Texans.
probably fade Texans, right? Yeah.
Texans,
Yeah.
Steelers.
You could do Jefferson and hope Kansas City loses, but it seems like we've got enough levers pulled here.
Oh yeah, the Kansas City thing was the one I was thinking of. I couldn't remember what the.
So
other
that
number
would be.
Well,
that
we
would
don't.
be
We only have one
Kelsey?
out to have Kansas City lose. So Kelsey's probably who I should take, not Jefferson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
And then
I think I'd play Minnesota defense here, but
I think it's your pick, so that's where we're playing.
Yeah,
I
I
think
took.
that's what I'd play. I'd play Minnesota defense here.
yeah, and they're not going to get used much at all. All right, here's the team: Jaden Daniels, Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Jacobs, Mike Evans, AJ Brown, Puka Nacua, Ladd McConkey, Cortland Sutton, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Tyler Bass. Minnesota defense. I feel like all. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the reason the Jefferson thing jumped out to me immediately was when we faded. We're essentially fading both the Ravens and the Bills for the Daniels pick, and as part of the Sutton play. Obviously, we have a soft fade on the Bills, so we're significantly fading the Bills. Andrews could be the play, but probably in 3 or 4, especially a Super Bowl run. You're talking about Lamar. You're talking about
Yeah, it has to be.
Derrick
You're right. It has to be Kelsey.
So it
Yeah.
kind of has to be the Chiefs in the Super Bowl
Yeah.
from the AFC, unless you're really picking like the Chargers or somebody to go all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also, it just it gives you more outs on Daniels playing less games.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Daniels
that's right.
in 2 could be
Daniels
fine
could win in
with
2
that
games
bracket.
in this lineup.
Yes.
If the Bills
in this
lose in
lineup.
round 1, Daniels can be optimal in 2.
Yeah.
We also picked the Eagles to lose in round 1. Like if all the dual threat QBs get bounced early, I mean it's not crazy. It's not likely, but who said it was likely?
You want to put Isaiah Likely?
I
feel
mean,
like
you could get the chalk Super Bowl and still win with this lineup. You just really need obviously.
This is
Buffalo
a
to lose
sick
round
lineup.
one.
it
Like
is
this
pretty-
tells a specific
The
story.
chat- This lineup pretty much fades every team. Well, the good news is this team has 0 chance of being duped.
0 chance of being duped.
That's our goal.
But I mean, this
Don't do
team with a 1 seed Super Bowl
Yeah,
is
It's live.
very, very live. As long as you get Washington, you need both upsets on the NFC side.
you need not even you need Washington to win and Denver to win. You get those 2 things, you've got a shot.
Hey,
Yeah,
Pat,
on one.
bring down Mike Evans' ownership just a little bit too while we're at it here. Big silly no McMillian love with Lattimore in Washington.
Dude, Evans
I legit
is
think-
such a good play.
Mike Evans is coming in at 12%. Dude.
No,
Like,
he's going to be below 30, I think. Yeah,
Dude,
it's
I
silly, but I
love
think it's
Bucky.
Deke
happening.
comes on and
projections
flag
love
plants
Bucky, and we still
McMillan.
haven't
The,
even-
Yeah.
the quarterback bros are out and about. He's coming in low.
They could also he could have an okay game and they win, given that they're favorites, and then have the better game the next week.
This was the worry early in the week. I was worried Bucky would beat Chalk, but why can't we just have nice things? It seemed like early in the week we were thinking it could be Evans, but nope, nobody's playing Evans. Has anyone wanted to play Evans other than Pete this whole week?
I haven't heard anyone say, let's put Evans in the lineup or I want to play Evans. It's all like, Evans will be chalky, but let's go Bucky here.
God, I guess I'm on Evans Island.
I'm with you, man.
No, it's a good play. He's a good play. I mean, the further the ownership comes down, he gets the better play he gets.
Let's just fucking jam Evans, obviously. Like,
Yeah.
he's like
It
a
is-
Hall of Fame wide receiver.
It
Just
does-
for 7 TDs.
It always reminds me like what a journey we come on. You know, it was only Monday when we first started doing this, but that feels like an eternity ago when we made the Boomer Optimal. And at the time, it felt so indecisive that we gave them co-Boomer Optimal chalk status. Like that's the one time we've ever put 2 players from the same team. We put Bucky and Mike Evans, and now it's separated in a massive way.
Yeah, I know. And that was one where I had it as Evans, I think, and then Ben convinced me.
Hassan
on the
did
show that
too,
this
and I was telling
Bucky.
you guys
Yeah.
both had Evans, and I was like,
Yeah.
I think it's probably Bucky.
Yeah.
As much as I don't want it to be.
No, you convinced me, and then it's just been kind of a drumbeat. Bucky's looked really good, and then the matchup, right? You get like And that's the way it's going to go for everyone this week. It's like, who are the players I want to play? Okay, now let me look more into the games. Help me break those ties.
Yeah.
And this is very clear cut. Great.
Well, it was a drumbeat, and it was also Leone coming on Tuesday and having Bucky at ETR projected ahead of Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, which maybe was like a gong, really, on Tuesday.
Yeah, yes. Use the symbols.
Oh my goodness.
I think we still have Bucky RB2 in points per game for FFPC.
Yeah. Well, my hope was here, Dink. This was my take the other day. If we could get a default app discount, because you have to scroll so far down to find Bucky in the points per game. There, like right next to Rashad White. I was like, baby's a little out of sight, out of mind.
The Bucky steam is too strong. People love Bucky.
The crazy part isn't the.
Do you think if his name was Charles, we'd like him enough, like as much? If it was like Charles Irving.
Charles Irving.
Charles Irving is like 32%.
Chucky Irving.
Oh, it could. Well, okay, maybe not Charles. Maybe just Chris. Chucky Irving is fun.
Charles Irving sounds
Chris
like
Irving.
a museum curator. Yeah, like no one's playing that.
The crazy thing though of this is the Evans hate. It's not the Bucky love. It's the Evans hate. Like that's.
I know that is surprising.
Fine.
Yeah. There's also like almost all my experience with this, because I'm usually the guy who's coming in with like this guy could outscore this guy in one game, and if they lose, it could be enough that like you don't really need them. That take is usually bad because the like in this case, like if you wanted to play McMillions or whatever at like 1-2%, compared to like Evans at like 30%. Evans is not 15 times more likely to outscore him in one game, but he's probably 15 times more likely to outscore him in two, and definitely more than that in three. And so like it's just such a narrow. I think sometimes with these types of contests, we focus on too narrow of a path, and we get like excited by this very narrow path of this like one offshoot play, and then people think they can play that like one offshoot play and then chalk up the rest of the lineup, and it's just like those end up being kind of bad lineups.
I think that's true. Yeah.
This is. Yeah. We talked about this at the beginning, but it's like you're better off predicting an upset that changes your whole team than you are projecting a one random guy to like maybe outscore the other guy by 5 points.
Yep.
Well, dudes, I think we're gonna power this down. We've said all there is to say.
Well, I gotta get this comment is made. Prime Revis versus Evans. There's less people worried than Lattimore. Narrative going crazy. And someone said we're better than the Evans take. To be clear, we're only trying to predict what the field does when we're talking about the Evans Bucky stuff. We're not saying we won't play Evans.
What Evans take? That we think Evans is a good player, or that he's going to be?
He was the guy that wanted us to play McMillan because Evans is getting shut down.
Oh, so he's actually pushing the narrative. Okay.
Isn't it so funny how quickly like Mike Evans just had his 11th straight year with 1,000 yards? It was like one of the coolest moments of the NFL season.
So
them
cool,
getting that and all kind. And we've just like he's like the last remaining dude. Brandon Cooks was in that draft class. Fucking Cody Lattimore, Alder. It's like one of the greatest wide receivers to ever play. And we're like, he's gonna get fucking shut down by Marshall.
And the cornerback we were worried about wasn't even certain to play. Is playing on one hamstring in the most like reactionary position on the field. He's probably going to get torched the whole freaking game. I mean, what are we talking about?
It's Mike Evans' revenge. It's finally all these years of pent up animosity and revenge, and Mike Evans is finally gotten his weakened opponent, and he's ready to sweep the leg. Mike Evans sweep the leg week.
Sweep the leg week.
Yeah, I actually think what if he gets suspended? That's 2 games.
I'm just imagining. No, Dink was the initial guy who said he wanted Pat like Steve Kornacki doing it. I feel like the episode going down. Oh, it's going up.
Lattimore's in. Oh no.
Dude, I mean, the Evans revenge game thing, if they put Lattimore on an island with one hamstring on Mike Evans, like that's how the Bucs are going to win. They're going to just throw it up to him. I'm fully in on the Evans. I'm joining you guys, Pete and Leone, on your Evans Island.
Gretch, your roller coaster of emotions with Bucky this week.
I'm swimming over there.
Yeah. It's almost like we're going to have about even amounts of both. All right. Ship chasing playoff week, always a blast. Thank you to all of our guests, starting with, Hassan and Raheem, Boomer, Opto show. We had Pat, share all of his projections with us on Tuesday. We had Dricko and Chris G yesterday. And then obviously our ETM guys, Leone and Dink, making time in their busy schedules to chop it up with us. And hopefully you guys all enjoyed this week. I know all of us here, Gretch, Pat, myself, look forward to it every year. And lots of stuff to draft. I know you guys got playoff best ball contest, you got DFS, you got all kinds of stuff going on. So good luck. Hopefully we can get another member from the ship chasing community taking it down. I see Toyo jumping in here, becoming a member after taking it down last year. So any final words from any of you guys before we sign off?
It's always a blast. It's always a blast every year. And it's like, all right, got to get the ownership projection fired up, see. And this year it's been probably more fun than ever. There's something about it, the way you kind of things shift through the week, get a sense of what everyone wants to play. It's such a simple contest in terms of the rules, but just trying to figure out where the sentiment is, because that's really what it comes down to. It's kind of the ultimate leverage contest.
Beautiful. Dink, Leone, any final words here?
Echoing what Crane said, I told this to Peter and Crane before the show, but I was driving home from dinner and I was like, every year it's like we decide to get together and pay 10 grand to do a school project for a week. So this is...
You were actually telling Gretch too, but Pete hadn't let him in the
I was listening in the background.
Sorry. All right. I think that's it. We don't know what our schedule is going to be next week. We need to decompress a little from this. I will say I'm doing my After Dark show tomorrow. So I'm going to be, I think, just going to be going live during the Ravens Steelers game, maybe around 9:00, shooting the shit. If you guys are watching that game, you can join me over on my channel. Otherwise, we'll be in touch with kind of our schedule plans going forward. But everyone enjoy the weekend. Good luck with all your teams, and we'll see you when we see you.